Hot topic right now. I think that there's a lot of issues or problems that DSOs in general are facing, and they're kind of taking it out on the payers and the dental insurance community, right?
So the gospel that I preach is that, PPOs are outsourced marketing costs. There's only 3 reasons why you're going to discount your fees as a professional.
Utilization rate comes into play here. And Tanner predicted that probably about 1% of offices out there, and they're usually larger groups, track that and track it accurately. Welcome to another episode of Dental Rift. My name's Gary Bird, and I'm here today with Tanner. And today's a special episode because normally we don't bring on guests onto the show, but we wanted to bring on Patrick to share with us some of his views on insurance, and I think it'll be very applicable to our audience. So Patrick, would you mind giving us first of all, thank you for coming on. And number 2, would you mind just sharing a quick background about what you do for the dental industry?
Sure. My pleasure. Thank you guys for having me on. So I am from the insurance industry. Boo. I know. I get that sometimes. And, people are like, well, what does that mean, Pat? Well, what it means is I've built dental insurance companies. I worked at Humana for a long time, had a good run there doing large and jumbo group sales. I was vice president of a dental insurance company. I have an insurance license. I'm professionally certified in dental benefits underwriting, HIPAA, high-tech, Medicare, wellness, many other things, none of which make me cool or hit at dinner parties. But, it helps us to be really effective at what we do. And what our firm does, Practice Quotient, so I'm the founder and CEO of Practice Quotient, and we are, call it like the agent or the advocate for the provider for our clients, which are providers. And so then we say, okay, well, what's amazing about this client? Then we go to the insurance industry and say, this is what's amazing about our client. Let's make sure that our fee schedules and compensation and terms of our agreement or network participation are equitable, right? And so that's what we do. And the way I see it, the provider, look at that camera right there, bam. The provider community and the payer community, when I say payer, I mean the insurance companies, they really need each other. Really. So they help each other quite a bit. But as much as they need each other, their financial interests are dynamically opposed, right? And where we come in is we kind of bridge that gap. And why I was excited to come on the show and talk about insurance with you guys is this is a very hot topic in our niche, right? In the dental niche right now, whether people are going out of network. I hear a lot of dental insurance companies are evil. Not everybody's evil. I don't buy that really. I don't think I'm evil. I still identify myself as somebody from the insurance industry. I don't want to spend the show defending the insurance industry either. I might make fun of them sometimes, but I'm not going to knock them, But I feel like I have the credibility to do that, just kind of peer to peer. Does that make sense?
Patrick, if you have to tell us you're not evil, it makes me question if that's true. Are you sure you're not evil?
That's a good point. I'm going to have to defer to the old Metallica song, Am I Evil?
All right, I guess we'll find out.
Probably depends on who you're asking and on what day it is.
Sorry to disrupt the show, but I got something crazy to share with you. We are attempting to connect with all of our listeners. We have thousands of people that listen to this podcast, and we want to meet you in person. We have 4 events coming up, and I want to give you a discount code that you can use for the next week to save $300 off your ticket. The discount code is Gary Bird, and the link is going to be just down below. You can also go to smcnational.com/events. I hope to connect with you in person and help each other grow our businesses. Can't wait to see you soon.
Okay, so background in dental insurance, like you said, hot topic right now. I think that there's a lot of issues or problems that DSOs in general are facing, and they're kind of taking it out on the payers and the dental insurance community, right? They've got increase in wages, they've got increase in blah, 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 but then all of a sudden now they can't increase their revenue. And why can't they? Well, it's because of these insurance payers. They're so evil, and we're going to take it out on them. Right. So I think it's a frustration of a lot of different things culminating that just gets taken out in insurance, even though it may not actually be an insurance issue in general. Right. So now as you kind of sit in the middle in between the payer and the provider, give me kind of a short perspective from your side, where is the breakdowns between these relationships between the payers and the providers?
I think that it varies by relationship, well, which is a very important distinction. To lump everybody in to one bucket, I think is intellectually shallow. Let's say it'd be like, well, all marketing firms are, snake oil and blowing smoke. But Gary Bird knows what he's doing. You know what I mean? So, I overall, you have two things happened. Well, more than two, but the way I see it, they're the biggest two were during COVID. All of these folks, the insurance carriers, I wish I could say that most of them sat around and found ways to come up with, ways to reach out to the provider community where the point of service and all of the delivery of care happens. A lot of them, not all of them, took that time to figure out ways to bring their cost of care down. Now, what's their cost of care? The providers, right? And so everything happens kind of slowly. These are larger organizations. It just doesn't happen like that. And then they started to implement some of these changes for their own strategy. And then you had the staffing shortage, and then you had inflation, and then all of these other things happened. And so it kind of became a perfect storm of, there wasn't a whole lot of love for the insurance companies anyway, but now they're the boogeyman for everything that's going wrong. And that said, your more established practices, DSOs are different. So most of our clients, we do have some corporate clients, but most of them are, independent, top tier established docs. They're busy. They're really busy. So they don't need a discount. Now, your larger practices and your corporate practices need to maintain their volume, and depending on which round they're at in their funding, that bar gets higher and higher. And so to ramp up their profitability, or how much juice can you squeeze out of that orange, becomes less and less the more mature that operation becomes. Is that a good answer? Does that make sense?
Okay. So ultimately then, though, there is still this, I liked your initial comment of like, hey, grouping them all together intellectually just doesn't make sense. And I agree with that. But I think that the reality is the industry, yes, you can go in and you can say there's a difference between Cigna and MetLife and United Health, Concordia, et cetera. United Health, United Concordia. But the reality is I think that in general, still, there is this culmination of like insurance in general and the feelings and vibes around it. Right. And so a lot of the times insurance is viewed as a marketing tool. Okay. And so what their UCR is versus what they're able to collect from their contracted rates can be or should be almost marked up to marketing costs. So I think a lot of the times people are coming in and saying, hey, let's utilize these insurance relationships of going in network in order to drive our patient count up. But then in reality, once their patient count is up and it's no longer the barrier to that, they continue to stay in network because of this. They feel like there is a lack of education, understanding of what it is to be in network and out of network, right? Once you're out of network, it doesn't mean all of a sudden you drop 100% of those patients. And there is a way to even calculate kind of what you could estimate would stay in. And even if they did or didn't stay in, what it would do. So when you're working with your clients, how much are you an advocate for staying in network versus out of network? I mean, is there a meaningful reason to go out of network that you kind of help your clients understand and recognize?
Yes, absolutely. So there's, you nailed it. You're hired. So the gospel that I preach is that, PPOs are outsourced marketing costs. There's only 3 reasons why you're going to discount your fees as a professional. Number 1 is to avoid empty chair time. Right? That's a good reason. I'll buy that. Number 2 is that there's a marketing component to it. Now, folks used to say to me in Georgia, where I live now, they're like, well, it's free marketing, Pat. And I'm like, no, Bubba, it's not free, right? You're taking, 40% marketing discount. You're spending $40,000 to get 60. You're just not writing a check, right? but there is a marketing component to it. You get to be put on the website with dozens of other names, woo, right? And the patient convenience of having claim paid is in network. Now, depending on your region and how managed care friendly that region is, then that can be useful. Like, is this an effective marketing tool? Absolutely. Do people want you to be in network? Absolutely. Do insurance companies have a lot more money and resources than your DSO, even larger one? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So do they want to push patients to their network? Yes, but it's not free. All right. And then the third reason, and this is the good reason, gentlemen, it's for referrals. So there's empirical evidence that demonstrates if you put yourself on sale, all right, it's no different than a new patient special or free whitening for life or free nitrous. I like that. Whatever you come up with, right? You say, I'm going to be on sale. You bring out a cost conscious consumer. And then they come in, they have an amazing patient experience, and then they refer to their friends, coworkers, church congregation, etc. Now, those people are coming in because they care about the endorsement of the influencer in their life. You have a convenient location, great staff. They care who puts fingers in their mouths. You have the best chairside manner in all of your state. They want to be cool like their friend. It doesn't really matter as long as they're coming in at full fee, right? And that's really, to me, where you can make the most of your PPO relationships. There's no one size fits all solution, but for just anecdotally looking across the thousands of projects that we've done, where you have 50% of your revenues coming in at full fee, or, assuming your fees are reasonable, and the other half is coming in at a reasonable discount. I mean, you should still be covering your overhead, which includes the doctor's salaries. If you can, the lower your discount becomes, obviously, the better off you are, assuming that you're meeting your scheduling needs. We're neutral. I'm neutral, quite frankly. But generally speaking, if the docs are booking out, 2 months and hygiene's 7, 8 months, and you can't get folks in, then you don't really need to discount, do you?
So how do you recommend people make that transition then? Because I've seen Tanner do this, where he's used insurances to grow his practices, and then strategically went through to remove them. Or by removing them, I mean deciding if we're going to stay in network, come out of network, and the strategy behind that. But it's laborsome, and it's not easy to even figure out sometimes. So how do you tackle that portion of it?
We have analytics. So we built, when I first started doing this, something it's really just as good or better than anything the insurance companies have. It's not really for clients, it's for us. And, you just want to determine, well, how much is that practice reimbursed? Does it matter? Like, what treatment do they do? We're not clinical. We just need to know what they do. So number one is like, well, how much are you reimbursed? Anytime you're, as I mentioned earlier, you should be covering your overhead, including the doctor's salaries, because their families really want you to. Ideally, you're going to be profitable. If you are down to 50 cents on the dollar, then if we can all agree that these are outsourced marketing costs, which they are, then what's the difference between putting yourself, giving up that big of a discount to, Delta or MetLife or anyone else? I'm not picking on you guys, just so you know, versus just putting yourself on Groupon and saying, hey, we're half off every day. People come in, you fill up your chairs, you make more money restorative, you don't even have to file claims. Now, to be clear, I'm not endorsing Groupon. I don't even know if people still use Groupon. I never did.
They're the worst.
It was
every time I was
say.
We did it.
If I said it on stage,
technique a couple times, and the ROI, the retention rate on those patients are probably the worst in the world.
That I heard the same thing, but the Texans get really mad when you say that. If you ever say it on stage, they jump up and they're like, "That's fee splitting, boy." And I'm like, "Look, calm down, Texas.
I've heard
calm
that.
down. I'm not your marketing guy, and I'm not your attorney either. Just trying to make a financial point. All right, so that's where you have to look at that first. You have to look at your schedule. These days, the overlapping of your contracts is important. to break things down, to keep things simple for me, for our clients anyway, because it gets complicated, all of the repricing, and especially like Tanner, you're in the New York market, probably. Did I get that correct?
Yeah, it was in the New York market. Yeah.
You were in the New York market. So that's like one of the most managed care friendly areas. And Gary's in SoCal, which is also, you could argue back and forth. Ultimately, it comes down to three things. I tell every client the same thing. I go, look, number one, how much do you get paid? All right. So we figure that part out exactly. We don't guess. All right. Number two, how important is that network to your patient acquisition and retention strategy? On a very high level, how much discounting do you need to do? How busy are you? All right. Then on a plan specific level, in California, can you ignore the 800-pound gorilla that starts with D? Not really, right? If you're by a base, TRICARE is important. If you're across the street from a VA hospital, or a very large employer, like if you're in Atlanta and you're right by AT&T or et cetera, that becomes important. So that has to be taken into account. And the third thing that comes up sometimes is, so number one, how much you get paid. Number two, how important is that network to your patient acquisition retention strategy? And the third one is, are they a good business partner for you? Now, technically, I'm neutral. So this can mean anything. So there's one carrier that's systematically denying third molars, right? So that's making the oral surgeons mad, and then they don't care. They're like, they're not even paying for it, so we just want out, right? Okay. Or they don't pay their claims for 10 months, or they make the doctor too many narratives, or they're driving the staff crazy. The bottom line is, nobody gets up in the morning to get dressed, drive to work so they can sit on the phone with, Blue Cross or anyone else. I'm not picking on you, Blue. Don't come out.
I was thinking Blue Cross too. I'm glad we're on the same page.
You were just second in the alphabet. That's all, alphabetical order, guys. Love you. Yeah. Smooches. Anyway, nobody gets up in the morning to get dressed so they can sit on the phone with an insurance company for 2 hours just to get the wrong answer anyway. Right. And then they have to turn around and say, hi, welcome to our practice. It's so nice to see you. Oh, you have Blue Cross. So now that doesn't show up on your balance sheet, but you're still paying for that person's time. Right. And then that leads to what you originally asked, staff turnover.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's hard here is that we talked about this yesterday, Tanner, is that utilization rate comes into play here. And Tanner predicted that probably about 1% of offices out there, and they're usually larger groups, track that and track it accurately. And so what you have is a bunch of guessing games of, should I fill this hole with insurance, yes or no? Do you have an answer to that, Patrick, from a utilization standpoint, or are you kind of at the mercy of the office's information?
No, we go into the practice management software and pull it. But right now, we're still
pulling it manually, or are you pulling manually? Do you have like an API connection?
Unfortunately, we don't. Working on that though. That would be ideal. If you guys have any ideas, suggestions, feedback on that, we can take it offline.
Patrick, always.
Oh, I knew we were going to be friends. I knew it. But yeah, so I am not a software developer. I am an insurance guy. I know exactly what I want. I've been trying to build it. But anyway, we can take that offline, because ideally that is what you would want to be able to do, is say, all right, well, here's what we're doing. But and then you may want to try out different things. Every client's a little bit different. But the insurance industry usually moves with glacier-like quickness. They've been moving faster. It's relative. But there's certainly a lot of things that are changing from a legislative point of view, certainly from a perception point of view in the provider community, and really from a market point of view, with the competition, that's competitive nature that's going on between the different carriers. This varies broadly by market, but there's what the gospel that I preach is that not all dental insurance companies are evil. All right. It just matters which one's the right business partner to you. Right. So Gary and Tanner, right. So Tanner, you ran a practice. So whoever it is, it's your name. right? I see Gary's face all over the place now. So his name and reputation means a lot. And I was really impressed with when he came on my show and was explaining how he went through his culture metamorphosis and sort of evolution. I thought that was awesome. And so I'm suspecting, and Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, that you're not going to lend your name to folks if you don't believe in that cause, right? And that's what dental insurance, the product is the docs, right? So it's, well, who do you want? If you don't like that company at all, and you start cursing and using lots of profanity every time you hear their name, then don't let them use your name and your reputation to sell their business and their product in your market. Does that make sense?
So you're saying for doctors, if you do not believe in the way that the insurance company is handling their relationship with their patients and or your patients,
And
then
you
don't get in network with them.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
We got 1 minute, Patrick. If you can give one final piece of advice to a dental office that's listening, DSO and or private, in consideration of insurance companies and their relationship with them, what would it be?
Review it on a annual or or semi-annual basis, and go through and talk to your team, the stakeholders of your organization, right? The folks that are, it's not just a financial decision. So you have to talk to the folks that are in the trenches every day too, and do an evaluation. This is very big money, and you choose your business partners wisely. That's
okay.
my
I agree
message.
with that. I don't think that enough people are reviewing those contracts and or adjusting them, negotiating them, etc. And it's a quick, easy way to get some money back in the practice that doesn't include a ton of change management within your organization. So it's a low-hanging fruit. But I agree. Patrick, thanks so much for coming on.
Yep. It's my pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you. And if you have any ideas, I'm all ears.
Yep.
Right,
Patrick,
we'll
just
chat.
real quick, what if someone wants to reach out to you, how can they get in touch with you?
www.practicequotient.com. If you want to hear more compelling rhetoric, you can go to Dental Business Radio, which is my show, and that's available on Apple, Amazon, Google, et cetera, et cetera. I speak on a regular basis, patricko'rourke.me. And so any of those websites, you can get in touch with me.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. Have a good one.
I really appreciate your time.
Peace.